Okay, so taking permission from the I request Dr. Harshad Garg, who will be the moderator session, to start. We will have Dr. Shivam joining us in between and then discuss the expert comments as and when he joins. Harshad.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah. I could request the host to mute Dr. Seth. I think there's some disturbance from background, sir, from Dr. Seth's sir phone. I think there's some, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank the president of the North Zone and the secretary, very dynamic and very enthusiastic secretary, for giving me an opportunity to moderate this webinar. I think this webinar has been, it's an attempt of various calls I get from various my young colleagues, how to go through this American fellowships. And there are so many questions about that. And so we'll try to touch upon the basic ground realities today, what the system is working on. And we'll go from basics and we'll go to the advanced stuff, even up to the licensing, board certifications, and the opportunities available for them. And I'm really grateful for the speakers who have agreed, especially the people from America who have agreed on Sunday early morning to be a part of this event. And yeah, as Dr. Gautam said, that it's spoiled not only Saturday evening, but also Sunday morning. Both of them have been spoiled because of this stuff, but I think we'll make worth of it. And it will be much of utility for all of the young colleagues in India. And fortunately, we all have Indian speakers, original speakers of Indian origin for this webinar. And I'm very thankful to North Zone USI, Indian American Urological Association, for supporting me for this webinar. Thank you so much. So without wasting much time, I'll start on a brief orientation about the American fellowships, a background, and we are very happy to take the questions from our young audience. And just please type in all the questions in the chat box, and we'll try to answer them at the end of our webinar and summarize all of them quickly. Most of the things will be answered within the webinar, so just please wait while the webinar ends. So good morning to my American colleagues and very good evening to everyone in India. I'm Harshad Garg. I'm a Society of Uro-Oncology Fellow at University of Texas Health and a Mace Cancer Center, San Antonio, Texas. And I would like to talk about American fellowships, when, where, and how. So nothing to disclose. So whenever we talk of American fellowships as a resident, the first question is whether we are eligible, whether we can do it. And the answer is very simple. Yes, it is possible. So let's begin. How can we start with it? So a very brief on that question, why fellowship in United States? So why would one think like, I want to do a fellowship in urology in a subspecialty in United States? So broadly, there are two reasons. Professional, because it can boost your career. It teaches your advanced surgical skills. And of course, it allows you to expand your horizon and increase the networking. But it is very helpful in your personal development too, because it might offer you superior quality of life. It helps you gain the social, cultural, and economic aspects in a different country. And of course, it will provide you an opportunity to settle in the United States if you have any plan to for a long term. And a good fellowship is the key. So whenever we talk of a fellowship, first thing is what should we see in a fellowship whenever we are trying to go into that program or applying for it? So the most important thing, because you have already done your residency training, you have got the background of the subject. Now, the most important thing is the clinical volume and hands-on training, as most of the fellows look for, to learn these skills so that they can hone them and then they can implement them in their future career. Apart from that, the fellowship should offer you a good future growth potential, that when you are doing a fellowship in a subspecialty, you should be surgically as well as academically at supreme on that particular subject and treat the disease based on the evidence-based science. Third important thing is where is the fellowship in states, who are the mentors and how much they can support you. And last but not the least is whether it is an accredited versus non-accredited fellowship. I've made it a point because I get a lot of calls that what is accredited and what is non-accredited fellowship. And I'll discuss briefly on that during this orientation. So broadly, whenever we talk of US fellowships as an international resident or an international faculty, we talk in terms of three things. First, it could be an observership or a travel fellowship. Second, it could be a research fellowship. And third, it could be a clinical fellowship. When we talk of observership or a traveling fellowship, so AU has an exchange program with Urological Society of India via Indian American Urological Association, which they call it as International Visiting Scholars Program. And this program is mainly with the Brazil, France, India, and Mexico. And Indian American Urological Association takes care of this program under the name of Chakrabarti Fellowship Program. And we have the fortune of this year's Chakrabarti Fellowship Program winner, Dr. Bora, to give a talk and briefly tell us how this fellowship works and what all we can expect from this. The second fellowship, or you can call an observership, is with the residents which come under the International Urology Residence Program. And I think we all know of that. That's an USI code, does an exam, and the top 4 of those are selected to come to the AUA. So what are these observership or traveling fellowship briefly? They, first of all, they're short-term observerships. They don't need any ECFMG certification. So that's the cool thing about that. You don't need to get EC certified. It essentially involves attendance of the AUA meeting, and it is a fully sponsored trip, and it is because of society collaborations. So you need to go through the society to get these fellowships. I think Dr. Bora would be touching more in detail about this fellowship later in this session. Then we come to research fellowship. Research fellowship does not have any clinical experience per se. It's basically you can observe some clinics or operating rooms as an observer, depending on the principal investigator. It basically works on some funded trial or a basic science research project, and you might get a salary. There is no centralized mass system. You get in touch with the program or research chair there, and it is not a much sorted fellowship among the clinicians. And the third, which is I think the essence of today's webinar, is the clinical fellowship. And ECFMG is prerequisite for that. We need to get a medical license for that. It's an extensive hands-on training, and it may have some dedicated research time depending on the program which we are looking for. And what I would like to just tell to my young colleagues, that there are a lot of people who come into the fellowship in states as a research fellow and think that it's a clinical fellowship, and they have not given their steps. So the bottom line is there's no clinical fellowship without ECFMG certification. It can be only observership or a research fellowship. So I cannot emphasize this point anymore, that you need to have an ECFMG certification to do a clinical fellowship in United States. Now, briefly, we'll touch upon accredited versus non-accredited fellowship. This is often a very big confusion in the minds of our young colleagues, whether it's accredited, whether it's non-accredited, how does it matter? And does it really matter? So first of all, whenever we talk of accreditation, accreditation is one, the main accreditation is by the ACGME, which is the Council for the Graduate Medical Education. And the second accreditation is the Subspecialty Society, which is giving this fellowship. When we talk of urology fellowship and their accreditation by the Graduate Medical Education Council, most urology fellowships are non-GME accredited. This GME is like a board of residency, which is accrediting the residency programs in United States, but most urology fellowships are not accredited by the Graduate Medical Education Office. However, two specialties, that is a pediatric urology and female pelvic medicine and reconstructive surgery, both of them are 2-year fellowships, some programs have GME accreditation associated with them. So how does it matter? So this GME, if you get into a GME program, it might help you in early board certification. And we'll just stop it here on board certification because we have Dr. Bhatt joining in, who will talk about the board certification later. But problem is that these fellowships conventionally need ACGME accredited residency, which is a residency in the United States or in Canada, and hence are not open to international medical graduates per se. So overall, if you are looking for a GME accredited program for IMGs, it's very difficult and often very rare to find your seat in this. The next, we go to the society accreditation, which is more feasible, which is more popular when you talk of any subspecialty in United States. First come the male infertility or andrology fellowships, where the American Urological Association, the Sexual Medical Society of North America, and American Society of Reproductive Medicine, all of them have together come up with the fellowship programs, and it happens through the AUA match process, which we'll talk about later. Then comes the Society of Urology Oncology, which gives you the Urology Oncology Fellowship. The third society is the Endourology Society. This society has fellowships in states as well as across the globe. However, what are the fellowships it's offering in the United States? They come under the purview of American Urological Association match process. The fourth is Society of Genital Reconstructive Surgeons. This is the fellowship society offering fellowship for reconstructive surgery. Again, it's a global society, but whenever any fellowship for GURS is happening in the United States, this will come under the purview of American Urological Association match process. And the last one is the Society for Pediatric Urology, which is all an ACGME accredited fellowship mainly. And all of these 5 fellowships are under the AUA match process. We have 2 other fellowships which might interest many of my young colleagues, which include Society of Urodynamics, Female Medicine and Urogenital Reconstruction, which is held by SUFU. And the second one is the American Society of Transplant Surgeon, which is for the Abdominal Transplant Fellowship. Both these 2 fellowships do not come under the AUA match process, and you have to have a separate match process for these 2 fellowships. In this, SUFU fellowship is an accredited fellowship, and it's not very much open to the international medical graduates. Now, AUA also mentions additional fellowships for the international, which has approximately 25 programs. You'll find them in their site. Again, the basic eligibility remains the ECFMG certification. They are more flexible. They do not have any match process per se, but you contact you just email the program director with your application and it might work out. Now, all these were accredited fellowships. Now we talk about non-accredited fellowships. Non-accredited fellowship is almost similar to an accredited fellowship. The only difference is it is not under purview of any society. So you might have, less structure, your more flexibility as per the program director. Your eligibility remains the same, which is an ECFMG certification. And it can be pure clinical, pure research. Mostly it is mixed. And the good part about that is no match process. And you just contact with the program director or any other faculty who's in charge of that particular fellowship or has some funds to sponsor you, and you get into this fellowship. Now, as I'm talking about the ECFMG certification, many of you would know what is ECFMG certification, but let's start and give you a brief on what is ECFMG exactly and why we are making such big thing out of it. So ECFMG is Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. That's the brief on that. But what we are looking for any application in fellowship is this particular certificate. So this is a certificate. It's of course ideally name and the identifiers on that certificate. But this is the one certificate which you need to apply for any fellowship in the United States. It carries your name. It carries your step 1, step 2 CK, and step 2 CS various dates. And it has a date issued. Recently, the step 2 CS could not be possible because of the COVID pandemic, and they had a substitute which we'll discuss, which is called OET exam as a practical exam, and hence the new ECFMG certificate is also carrying an expiry date. However, conventionally, any ECFMG certificate does not have any expiration date. All these steps have to be done within the 7 years when you start from your first exam. So how do you go about this ECFMG certification and who is eligible? So simply put, anyone who has done any medical school in India is eligible for that, or in any other country. They have got a dictionary of the medical school on the World Federation, and your school should be on that. And mostly, I assure you that a good school would be on that dictionary, so that should not be a problem. How do you begin your process? You create a profile on the ECFMG portal. You get ready with your medical school transcripts. So what is a medical school transcript? This term often confuses a lot of residents, especially when they have been, in the medical school for left the school for past 5 or 7 years. So medical school transcript is nothing but your diploma, and there is a clock hour roast, like a format which gives that how many hours you have spent in each of the specialty during your medical school, which includes the anatomy, physiology, and anesthesia, and all of the stuff. So their school, your dean office gives you a transcript saying that this guy has spent these many hours in each of these rotations, and that's all. You just need these two things. And then there's a process for credentialing verification, which you upload them to ECFMG, and ECFMG sends it to your school, and they just click, okay, these are verified. Once you have your things in the system, you have to have passed the step 1, step 2 CK, now step 2 CS, which is not happening now. So you have an OET, which is an occupational English test. We'll discuss about it. Once you are done with these things, that is 3 exams, step 1, step 2 CK, and a practical exam, which is either CS or a OET, you get your ECFMG certification. Once you get this certification, then ideally you should be going for your step 3, because fellowships conventionally require you to pass step 3, especially if you are on an H-1B visa sponsorship. So these are the 4 main exams, that is step 1, step 2 CK, step 2 CS, and step 3, which should be done before joining in for a fellowship. So first question, when you are in India and you are working in rupees and suddenly things start coming up in dollars, so you say how much investment I'm looking for just for the exams, if things go well. And I must tell you, it's around approximately $3,000 to $3,500. So you should have it in your mind that this is a basic amount I'm looking for whenever I'm doing all my exams, which includes a fees for ECFMG around $160, and around step 1, step 2 CK around $1,000. And then if you have step 3, then again $1,000, or if you have OET, then it is $500. So how does this process work? So the good part of these steps is that you can do step 1, step 2, CK, or CS or OET anytime. There is no particular order. But just to put it simply, when we talk of step 1, it is a computer-based MCQ exam. The good story is it's now pass and fail, changed recently from the scores. So it gives you a lot of confidence when you would do your step 1 and get a pass, and it's fairly easy to pass. It mainly has first and second year professional MBBS questions, but with an application, so third year might help. And whenever you start this, you should be done with all of your steps till certification by 7 years. Then you have a step 2 CK, which is again a computer-based MCQ exam, and herein you get a score. So this is the only exam where you're having score right now. So it slightly matters in fellowship, but it's mainly of an importance when you're applying for your residency match in United States. But you have a score in this as your quality filter. The third is the step 2 CS, which is not happening for past 2 years since the COVID pandemic. It has 12 patient encounters. It is like many people get haunted with this because you have to have a practical conversation with the patient and then type in your notes. And the sad part is that it only happens in the United States in 5 or 6 cities. It's a pass and fail. And presently, because of the COVID pandemic and travel restriction, this has not been happening. So they came up with a substitute for this practical exam, which is OET, which is called Occupational English Test. It's basically an Australian exam which has reading, writing, listening for the English, and you get a grade on that based on your score. And if you get a grade more B or higher, you are allowed your grade as pass, and it's happening across the globe. While step 2 CS is an 8-hour long grueling exam, OET is just 1 hour 20 minutes exam. Step 2 CS has live patient encounters who are actually actors, while in OET, you don't have any live encounters. It's a computer simulated program where you have a reading, writing section, and they talk, and you have to answer some questions. So these are the 3 exams you have to have once to get your ECMG certificate. Once you get your certificate, then you give your step 3, which is a mandate for many of the fellowship programs in the United States. And it's always a good idea to give it if you are planning for application of your fellowship. It's a 2-day exam, intensive exam. It has an MCQ, and it has a 13 computer simulated cases, which comes as encounters where you have to tell the order. It's basically like a post-intern exam for Indians when you have, we have an idea of basic clinical care, and you just raise orders and how do you diagnose and do the management. You get a score for that, and this happens only in USA. Now, the question is, as a urology resident, when should I start? It's now. I should do it tomorrow, or once I do my residency and then do some fellowship around, and then I might start looking to do my ECFMG certification. So you must remember that the time to start is now. Whenever you want to start, if you are planning on ECFMG, you have to plan your schedule, and you can do it anytime, whenever whenever your residency or fellowships you're pursuing gives you time to give those exams. Because even for the fastest pace, ECFMG certification at least takes 1 to 1.5 years, giving all these exams, getting the certification, all this at least takes 1 to 1.5 years. So once you are done with your exams, what next? How do I do? How do I go about it? And so the next step is you have to make a profile at the American Urological Association portal. And now we'll talk briefly about the match process. So the AUA has done a very good thing, that it has brought all the society specialty fellowships under its purview, except the SUFU and the transplant, and there's a common match process for them. So what is this match process? The match process is basically when you are ranking the universities and the universities are ranking you. So for applying for this match process, what you should have at least ECFMG certificate and a preferably step 3, and you should be at least post residency or at least in the final year of residency. If you are satisfying these two conditions, then you should go to this AUA portal. I think I've shared the email link here, the website link, and create your profile for the match process. For applying for AUA match, you have to be a member of AUA, and then only you get your AU ID. And I think many of you would be the member of AUA because of the USI AUA course, which happens in Hyderabad almost every year with the help of USI. So many of the residents do become the member of AUA. So whenever you are applying for this match process, what all do you need? You should have your medical school diplomas and transcripts ready with you. You should have a proof of urology residency or a urology diploma with you. You should have ECFMG certificate with you. You have letter of recommendations. Generally, most of the programs would require 3 recommendation letters. And I would strongly recommend that 1 recommendation letter is from your program director, program chair, who can vouch for you that how hard you work during your residency days. An application form, which many societies would post on their site. When you have all these things filled in, you email the program directors for with your all this stuff that I'm interested in this particular fellowship, and in parallel you will be filling your on it on the portal of AUA. So it works 2 ways. You have to be active on the portal, and you have to email the program directors separately. If they find your CV, if they find your everything good, then you interview them, and once the interview is over, both the programs and the candidate fills their preference list based on the society, on the universities they have interviewed on the portal, and then this match process happens. So coming to the timelines, so this I just took some snapshots from the AUA website, which if we talk of 2023 fellowships, which conventionally start in July 2023, the deadline is 1 year behind, that is April 15 or April of the 2022. So if you are planning to start your fellowship in the July of X year, so by the April of X minus 1 year, so it's 2023, so July, so by April 2022, your application process should be complete. You should be on the portal, you should have emailed the program directors, and you should start getting some interviews where you are going to getting matched and all that stuff. So generally for all the fellowship broadly, the deadlines are between March and April of that particular year, and the results come in by the June and July of that particular year. So we are working well 1 year in advance to to plan your fellowship and to start your fellowship. And I think we have various speakers, eminent speakers from across the United States and from Canada, who would talk about these specialty fellowships and how the match process work. Especially, I would like to talk about transplant fellowships because they are not conventionally considered as urology fellowship. It's like an abdominal organ transplant fellowship. So they do not come under the purview of American Urological Association. They have a separate match process entirely. And we don't have a speaker today on this, But if anyone has some queries, they can always mail me and we can touch more on that particular transplant fellowships. The, the good part is that IMGs are eligible for this, and approximately 65 programs are available, and it is a different fellowship programs have different volumes, different preferences. Some are doing more kidney, some are doing more liver, and it's a lot of general surgery people would tend, or GI surgery people, because they have the exposure of the liver, would tend to go into the transplant fellowship as compared to the urology guys. But it's always open to the urology people as well. Now, a very quick question which often hits everyone's mind: what are the factors getting me into a fellowship? And before I talk, I'm really fortunate to have Dr. Dharam Kaushik with us, who is the program director of the SEO Fellowship. And of course, he would throw some lights later on this, that what all we see when they interview and when they rank them in the match process. But briefly, what I can tell you about the factors are your academic background, like how was your academics during your medical school, during your residency, awards and all that stuff. The second and very important thing is the publications. Whenever you talk, because now you are applying for your fellowship, it's a specialty training as compared to simple residency. So how much interest and research interest you have in that particular field, that is reflected on your publications. Letter of recommendation is a very important aspect of your application, because they tell about the candidate how does he behave in the ward, what's his general conduct, what's his skills. So always make sure to try to get good letter of recommendations whenever you're planning for a fellowship. Of course, your clinical acumen, your clinical exposure of various cases which your institute has offered during residency, these form an important background when you are being selected as a candidate for your fellowships. The sixth one, I think, that networking. I think everyone is so much known about social media now, but it's just about your contacts, your networking, how well you connect with the people, how do you talk to them, how do you carry yourself. All these things are important, and all these things combine to make you a CV, which is the essence of your application process. And when all these things come together, they might jeopardize you. How do I go about this? How do I go about that? But what is most important is just remain optimistic, because it is feasible, it is possible. It's nothing like a rocket science here. You have done your residency, you have done your part, you should apply for your fellowship, and just remain optimistic that you hopefully would get it. So there's one more question which I often get asked by many people is, should I come for observership before? So what is that? Basically, a lot of residents after doing their residency would like to get some exposure in United States, and it's not at all a bad idea. If you want to come, mostly you have to pay for yourself every time. So, but it gives you a good amount of exposure to what's happening in states, particularly in clinical practice. It might help you get a letter of recommendation for your application. It might give you clinical exposure for that particular subset of specialty. And of course, it will help in your networking. And if you are good enough, you might be able to, do some publication with that team where you have come in for observership in United States. But a very important thing is, whenever you are choosing the program where you are coming for observership, spending so much money, first of all, check whether IMGs are eligible for their fellowship opportunities. You should check the past background match process. How do they go about their match stuff? And it should be a strong mentorship and support, because you will at least need a good letter of recommendation from that particular program when you're applying to the AUA fellowships. So observership is a good idea. It's not a mandatory. And if you're getting it, you should go with it. But always, be cautious. Where are you going and how would they help you? And since I'm always saying that it is feasible and it is possible, so let's talk based on facts. So I just got a summary of the match statistics for the next year fellowship, which just came out, in June and July this year. And when you talk of all the four major societies, which have Society of Urology, Endocrinology Society, and GURS, you have a success of around 16 to 33% match rate for international medical graduates, which is not bad at all. You have a fair chance of getting into these fellowships with a good credentialing and good CV. So I think I should just say that it is possible, it is feasible. You just need to know to start with this, not fear with this, that it's a difficult endeavor. yes, it is a challenging stuff, but if you want to come to States, this is one of the best things to do and start with, and just start whenever you want to start. And so before I start this session with my eminent speakers, I'm very thankful to all of these speakers today who have made us possible for this webinar. And especially my two colleagues, Dr. Sumit and Dr. Archan, who have been there, who are the current urology fellows in States, who did their residency in India. And they have been, guiding me and supporting me on the information for these fellowships. So now I would request Dr. Abhinav Sidana.
Harshit, Harshit, just 1 second. Dr. Shivam has joined and he wants to
Sure,
make
sir.
a comment.
Sure,
And he
sir.
will. Dr.
Sure,
Shivam, sir. He just joined. He messaged me that he wants to. Oh, just hold on. Again, Shivam sir has some signal issues. Harshit, you can please go ahead with it.
Okay.
So once we have him back, we will have a comment from him.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
No issue, sir. No issue. We understand the network stuff. So thank you so much. And so I would now request Dr. Abhinav Sidana, who is an associate professor in urology of Cincinnati, and is a Society of Urology fellowship for from the University of Cincinnati. Sorry, let me stop my screen. So talking briefly about Dr. Sidana is an AIMS graduate. He did his urology residency from University of Cincinnati and then did his SEO fellowship. Presently, he is the associate professor in Division of Urology in University of Cincinnati and is also very active in focal therapy in urological cancers, particularly prostate cancers. And so I request him to give us a brief about the SEO fellowships, their match process. Sir, Dr. Sidana.
Thank you, Harshit, for putting this webinar together. And thank you, NZUSI, for giving me an opportunity to present on this. As Harshit gave my background, I'm a urologic oncologist at University of Cincinnati. I did MBBS from AIMS, came here, did a research fellowship first at Johns Hopkins, and then mashed into residency at University of Cincinnati. Followed by that, I did a fellowship at NCI. And I think the SEO fellowship is probably one of the best things that has happened to my career. And, it is, when I finished residency, I wanted to do bladder cancer. And I was looking for bladder cancer opportunities. And one thing led to another. Personal reasons, I ended up in DC doing SEO fellowship under Dr. Peter Pinto. And that has actually given the whole different meaning to my career. And now we have established a big focal program in Cincinnati. And that's where my research and clinical activities are now focused on. So SEO fellowship can be actually remarkable in how they can shape your career because they are usually in very strong academic centers, and they have a lot of research background. They have a lot of clinical volume, and they can just shape your career. So I was looking at SEO, and Harshit helped me put together these slides. But the mission statement on SEO website is that the SEO fellowship has to have 3 components, additional clinical training. We all get some training, especially in US in urologic cancers during our residency. So we're comfortable in US doing robotic prostates and robotic nephrectomies. But as a resident, we don't get exposure to the very complex pathology. Actually, at least we don't get the autonomy in complex pathology. So I think you get that autonomy in fellowship. But one thing unique about fellowship, SEO fellowship, is a lot of multidisciplinary exposure. When you're a resident in US, you take care of these cancers, but only from urology standpoint. You just have bare minimum interaction with radiation oncologists, medical oncologists, and I think understanding their point of view, and my knowledge progressed so much in this fellowship. I started to understand medonc, radonc way more during my fellowship, and that was the reason multidisciplinary exposure is one of the important components of SU fellowship. And the third and most important, exposure to urologic oncology research. So this is an academic fellowship. The fellowship is designed to prepare academicians, not to just robotic surgeons. There are different sort of minimal invasive fellowships for just purely clinical trainings, but SGO fellowship incorporates academic opportunities, and actually it's more focuses on academic opportunities than on clinical training. Usually it's 2 to 3 years long, and 2 years are minimum for SGO certificate, but a lot of fellowship programs will allow you to do third year to allow you to continue research or some sort of extra degree. The programs have become more and more standardized now. Like 5-10 years ago, they were not that standardized. By the time I did my fellowship in 2017, things were definitely way more standardized. And now I hear they are like way more standardized. Number of cases are monitored. Research year has been now really monitored that it has to be 80% research and less than 20% clinical time in 1 year of dedicated urologic oncology research. And in terms of 1 year clinical training, there's definitely a lot of exposure in the operating room, but there's also a lot of exposure in the multidisciplinary care of these patients. Like surgery in US, there are some basic requirements that need to be met in terms of clinical exposure, number of bladder cancer cases, number of prostatectomies, number of kidney cases. So they're more standardized now. So when you get an SUO fellowship, you are kind of promised a bare minimum of quality of this level, right? So very standardized. But the unique thing about these fellowships are, a lot of these fellowships are very different from each other. So you can actually individualize your non-clinical time and make it very unique. These programs offer opportunities to do masters in public health, masters in science, degrees in clinical trials, degrees in health service research. So you can do it in 1 year of research time, or you can expand your fellowship for 2 years and then do a degree. And that has been really hallmark of this fellowship. So NCI fellowship, for example, was very different than a lot of other clinical fellowships. So it was very heavy on prostate imaging and targeting. And I used my research time to, of course, do research in prostate cancer, but I also started in MPH at Johns Hopkins at that time. And my supervisors, fellowship directors, all of them were very supportive. So I would just drive to Baltimore 1 day a week and take classes. And that helped a lot in my understanding of research and development of clinical trial protocols. The other unique aspects of NCI fellowship was there was a 4-month of dedicated clinical trial block. And that's a unique thing about NCI. And that has helped me tremendously. Like even as a junior attending, I was able to understand trials more properly. That's why I've been now PI on 10 clinical trials, have my own industry sponsor and investigation in trials because of that unique part of NCI training. And other fellowships are different, and they have their own unique strengths. Some fellowships are very strong in basic research. Some are very strong, like Michigan is very strong in health services research. So if you do a 3-year fellowship at Michigan, 1 year clinical and 2 years of health MPH, then you come out as a very accomplished health service research. Now, a lot of these opportunities are competitive, and sometimes it's difficult to get them as international medical graduate, but these opportunities do exist, and I just wanted to highlight those things. There are 35 approved programs and around 55 spots. They're all listed on the SU website, and these are links which you can go and look into detail about these fellowships, how to apply, how many spots they have. There's, I think, only 1 or 2 in Canada, but most of the programs are in United States, and almost all of them are associated with NCCN designated cancer center. These are comprehensive cancer center, get a lot of funding from NCI, and have multidisciplinary programs. So you get all aspects of urologic cancer training. Application is actually very straightforward. Once you have got ACMG certification, the application form is easy to fill, ask about your demographics, medical school information, your scores, attach a CV to it, and it needs 3-letter references. Even though the website doesn't talk about personal statement, but I think it just kind of culture to include your personal statement in these applications. Why do you want to do oncology fellowships in US? And then on those websites, there are the addresses for these programs, and so you have to mail the actual packets. There's no electronic system to upload these documents. Along with the reference letter, SU also requires this form to be filled from your referees, and it's just basic forms about their motivation, clinical ability, research acumen, and all that stuff. And this is just an example of timeline from last year match. And so it is a 6-7 months long process when you apply to when you actually get the results. And once you apply, then each program has their individual interviews, and they were virtual for a couple of years. And I think they're resuming back to be in-person interviews now soon. And usually it's a very competitive match. One of the competitive fellowships these days, they have 35 programs, as you can see. This is the match statistics from 2022, 35 programs, 54 spots, and not all of the spots are great. Most spots are reasonable in clinical training. That's kind of prerequisite, but a lot of the spots would not be able to help you launch an academic career. And I think that's one of the mission statement of SUO, that these fellowships are for building academicians, and some spots just don't have enough academic work going on, but they have enough clinical volume to get approved as a SUO fellowship. So you'll definitely get a good clinical training in all 54 of the spots, but you may or may not get enough research mentorship, a platform to get into an academic job. But as you see the match, there were 110 applicants who registered, and 52 matched. So a lot of them went unmatched. The match rate for US fresh grads is pretty good, 93%. Even US old graduates is 74%. For IMGs, and this IMG means like residents who have not done residency in the United States, the match rate is 23%. So more competitive, a little bit more challenging. I think it is certainly possible. Like, from India, 23% doesn't seem that low a number for us, but in America, it is definitely considered pretty low number for the match rate. So that's my brief overview of SGO fellowship. But I think it's a great fellowship to learn, to get better, to become better clinician, and to become better academician. And it definitely opens up a lot of doors. If you can get an SGO fellowship, I think getting a job in America gets very, very easy. Without even doing residency, because I think these are competitive fellowships, and I think they are desirable fellowships. So I just want to give you a brief overview of a meeting I put together called Focal 2020. And Focal 2020, we started the first year, and then now this is our third year of this meeting. So it's a meeting in Frontiers in Oncological Prostate Cancer Care and Ablative Therapy. So Focal is just an acronym, but we have this meeting, 3 main focus of this meeting. One is BPH, one is focal therapy, and one is in-office transperineal interventions. We have hands-on courses for all these, and there are a lot of educational lectures from the big legends in this field. It's usually a meeting which is very well attended by international faculty and international audience. And there is a virtual component of this, which will give you enduring material. Like you can join the meeting, but you can listen to the lectures for another 6 to 12 months. So if you're interested in these three topics, please check this out. The website is focaltherapy.com, and it's going to be, and if you're in the United States, please see if you can join us in Beverly Hills, California. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abhinav, for such a comprehensive talk. And it's wonderful to have you here. Just quickly add one comment that yes, personal statement is very important. I didn't talk about it in my lecture, I think. But when you talk of SEO application process, they have a column in the application about the personal statement, that why do you want to do urology, oncology, and you have to be really, good at it. It's a very important part of an application, that how much you desire to do a particular specialty and what drives you there. So for everyone who is applying, that should be an important part of the fellowship application. Thank you, Dr. Abhinav.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to request Dr. Gagan Gautam to discuss about the role of American fellowships in shaping your career in India. Professor Gautam doesn't require any introduction. He's the Director of Urology, Oncology, and Robotic Surgery in Max Saket, Delhi. Trained in United States in Chicago and an AIMS resident, ex-graduate. He has over 75 publications. He's well known in Indian urology oncology community and is among the initial ones who is able to carve out his niche in the urology oncology in India, doing a specialty practice and succeeding. A lot of us have him as an inspiration when we come to United States and if we plan to go back for a fellowship. Thank you, Dr. Gautam, for being here. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Harshit. Firstly, before I start, I would really like to compliment, of course, Abhinav did have a fantastic SEO related talk, and I really appreciate that. It made it very clear and very simple. Prior to that, what you had got together, all the information that it takes literally months for people to get together and to really find out about what's really going on in the American fellowship scene. You could put them into one presentation, one slide, one set of slides, and give it out. So I think not only is this particular talk of yours going to be very useful in this webinar, but also I think a lot of this will be probably the go-to talk on YouTube for a lot of Indian residents who are going to be looking at doing fellowships abroad. And fantastic, really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, NZUSI, for giving this opportunity. Yeah, I cannot be more thankful, Dr. Singh. Yeah, thank you, sir.
So I'm going to now share my screen for my presentation. I think you should be able to see it now.
Yes, sir. Able to see
Are you able to? Okay, great. So thank you so much. Firstly, North Zone Urological Society, Dr. Kamal, Dr. Shivam, and Harshit, of course, you for giving me this opportunity. It's really an interesting and an offbeat topic. And to be honest, this is for the first time that I'm going to be speaking on this topic in the last 10, 11 years that I've finished my fellowship on. And I'm really excited about what it is. So the first thing is, why does somebody do an American fellowship? Why does he or she do a fellowship? And I think that's because one wants to choose a particular skill which he or she is really interested in and learn it really well and be more adept at it. But to be honest, I think it's also got something to do with the brand value that comes with having done a fellowship, and especially in the US. And that brand value is something that we may not talk about, but it's something that is inherently there in the minds of the urology residents when they're thinking of doing a fellowship. And the purpose of everything basically remains the same, and that is to launch your career in a way which helps you achieve your goals, whatever they may be, and really become good at what you're doing and have a great career ahead. How then does a fellowship work? What happens when you're in an American fellowship? Well, some of it has already been alluded to by Harshit and by Abhinav. And firstly, the thing is that whenever you go there, in most of the fellowships, there will be a structured training. So you will be taken through the steps of a particular procedure, the most common procedure that you're doing, in a very systematic way, so much so that by the end of the fellowship, you would be reasonably confident about doing the full procedure yourself safely and efficiently. And that may be putting an artificial sphincter, or whether doing a robotic prostatectomy, or being able to do an excellent hypospadias repair, whatever you may choose. The fellowship steps are structured very nicely in most of these situations. There is an academic rigor, which again, my previous speakers have talked about, that the publications, presentations, academics, training the residents is an inherent part of any or most American fellowships. And that is something that will enable you to develop on an all-round basis your own skills and your own abilities in that particular subspecialty. And again, there's a very good hands-on experience in most of these fellowships. So you will get to do the steps that you want to do. So if you're going to do a robotic fellowship, you will be able to do a robotic prostatectomy safely at the end of the procedure, and you would have gone through all the steps very nicely. But ultimately, it's also about camaraderie. And you may be out of your fellowship for many years, but you still feel a part of that. People that you work with, your teachers, your co-fellows, your residents, in some way, whether you maintain a regular contact with them or no, but in some way you're connected together, and you come together to enrich yourself on a professional basis in this regard. But I think a few things need to be very clear. One really needs to know what life after fellowship will be. And that is where I feel is the crux of the situation, where my talk really starts out, because the previous speakers have already actually told you what happens during the fellowship. Now, life after fellowship is actually not a bed of roses. Nobody is going to be waiting, in Delhi airport or Mumbai airport with garlands for you to come and head the department, whichever place you choose, whether it's in India or in the United States. In a lot of ways, what you're doing is actually you're taking a fresh start, because you've gone from India as a general urologist, and you're either going to stay in America or come back to India as somebody who is a specialist in a particular field, but still the people around you, your peers, your patients, all those people do not really know that you exist. So to a large extent, this is going to be something where you may have the abilities and the qualifications, but you do have to make a fresh start right from the beginning. And you should have the humility and the ability to accept that. The first and the most important decision to be taken when you complete a fellowship in the US is whether you're going to come back to India or you're going to stay in the United States. And to a large extent, this decision is going to be driven by your personal thoughts and your personal circumstances. You can make a successful career out of yourself after a fellowship anywhere you go in the world, because you have acquired the skill and the ability and the confidence to be good in the particular field that you have chosen. But whether that success is something that you want to achieve in America, there's a different path to be followed. To be honest, a path that I am not that much aware of, but the other program directors here who are very successful in their field, somebody who can brief you about that. Or you have the option of coming back to India. Sometimes the decision will not be taken by you, but by your family. And once you do get to a particular place, there will be a decision to be taken whether you're going to be following an academic practice or a private practice. In the US, I do not believe, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, I do not believe that private practice is really an option unless you're board certified. And for that, of course, you have to do your residency much more often than not. But in India, you can decide whether to join an academic practice, join a medical school as a professor, or whether you want to continue or you want to join in the private practice, working in a big corporate hospital or in any hospital that you may choose. But my suggestion would be that if you do come back or whether you stay there, it's always good to be a part of a team. A lone wolf can only achieve this much. But if you're a part of a team, then you support each other. Everybody has their own specific subspecialties. You get the support of your colleagues, and at the same time, you're not really stepping on each other's toes. And as a result of that, you are able to focus on your own specialty rather than having to do everything. I think one of the problems that sometimes the fellows, when they come back to India after doing their fellowship, they face is whether they should remain the general urologist that they were before they went, or whether they should focus only on the subspecialty that they've done their fellowship in. I think to a large extent, the latter approach is better, but of course, everybody has to work on their own circumstances, depending on where they are practicing, which city they are in, which team they are a part of. But the more you narrow down your field, the more things you say no to, the more is the likelihood that you will have time to not only do the clinical stuff that you're doing, but also participate in academic activities, make presentations, be recognized as somebody who has a certain amount of experience and expertise in that particular field, get invited to the conferences that you attend as delegates now, get invited to the same conferences as faculty, and get the peer recognition that is essential for you to develop into a successful subspecialist urologist in the years to come. So without peer recognition, it's very difficult to be able to really utilize your fellowship to develop your career. And that only comes to a large extent with a focus on clinical as well as academic skills. You need to write the papers, you need to train the fellows, you need to train your own residents, you need to make the presentations to let people know what you have done and who you are. Coming to more evidence-based part of the talk, there is little doubt about the fact that a fellowship-trained surgeon invariably achieves better outcomes in almost every field, whether it's orthopedics or urology, as compared to a non-fellowship trained surgeon. And it's not because he's inherently gifted or anything like that, but it's simply because he or she has dedicated and devoted enough time and enough hours to do the same thing again and again, while a non-fellowship trained surgeon usually gets spread out over the subspecialties. And one of the examples from our particular specialty of urology is the positive surgical margin rates of radical prostatectomy done by fellowship versus non-fellowship trained surgeons. And sometimes the odds ratio are 2.5 or 2.1. So sometimes you're twice as likely to have a positive surgical margin if you are not fellowship trained as compared to being fellowship trained. Now let's talk about the money. I think a lot of us may be feeling that, look, I'm going to be a subspecialist, I'm going to do a fellowship. If I'm concentrating on one particular field, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to get more money. Well, that may not be true. So sorry to burst your bubble here, but that may not really be true. In fact, there are certain subspecialties in which after doing a fellowship, you are likely to actually end up making less money than if you would have if you were a general urologist. Now, these are American figures, so they may not really match up to the Indian figures, but there's no doubt about the fact that a general urologist does have multiple possible sources of income, but at least in the initial years as somebody who's doing only one subspecialty, you may be restricted as far as the amount of money that you can make, and this can actually extend over a period of time. So it's possible that after doing your fellowship, you may end up making less money than if you were doing the entire urology spectrum. So you should only do your fellowship out of the love for that subspecialty, out of your interest in that subspecialty, and not out of the financial benefits that you think will accrue if you do that fellowship. So in conclusion, I would like to state, in the words of Robin Sharma, that your mastery in a particular field only depends on a few things, and luck is unlikely to be one of them. Yes, there is something to be said about being in the right place at the right time, and that's what it is. But to a large extent, your focus in one particular subspecialty, blanking out the others, not trying to get tempted by the other subspecialties after your fellowship, your patience and your diligence in being able to devote the amount of time that is required to develop a practice. So even after a fellowship, if you restrict yourself to one particular subspecialty, it will take at least 5 years, before you start seeing the rewards in terms of your practice, your recognition, the financial gains, how much you are pursued. All these things are likely to take at least 5 years, and you have to be able to exhibit the patients that is required after that. Then, of course, repeated practice of the same steps, of the same particular procedure again and again is likely going to result in a situation where people will start recognizing you, and you will be able to achieve the success that you have dreamt of when you started thinking about doing a fellowship. So I wish you all the best, and I'm sure that as you aim towards doing these fellowships and advancing your career, you will definitely be successful in achieving those goals. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and over to you, Dr. Harshit.
Thank you, Dr. Gautam, for bursting the
Harshit,
bubble. Yeah, Dr. Sharma is here. Dr. Pridarshi is here.
Dr. Shivam is here with us.
Sure, sir.
Can you hear me, sir? And this is, I think so, he's in the aircraft right now. I'm just
Wow.
trying to get him. He is in the forum.
Hello, everybody.
Hello,
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
sorry I couldn't join you before. I welcome you all to this interesting and very kind of fascinating topic. And we had a similar topic just a few weeks back about training and fellowships in United Kingdom. So this particular webinar, I welcome all the speakers, and it has been very well crafted by both Harshit Garg and our dynamic energetic secretary, Dr. Kamaljeet. So I thank all the speakers who have taken time out of their busy schedule and for this particular webinar, which will really, I think, help our younger colleagues who would probably try their luck in urology in the United States. So thank you once again. I welcome you all. Thank you very much. Go ahead, please, Dr. Kamaljeet.
Thank you, sir, for your comment. I apologize, everybody. We had some issue from the sir side. Now it's over to Dr. Harshit to please carry forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Priyadarshi. So thank you, Dr. Gautam, for such a comprehensive talk and bursting the bubble, specifically for all those young residents who want to come to States and then might go back. So I think he has touched everything in comprehensive about finance, about your specialty practice, about your opportunities. So, and of course, you can always reach to him later whenever you have some doubts about practicing a specialty in India. And thank you, Dr. Gautam, so much. Now I will request my mentor, Professor Dharam Kaushik. He's an associate professor and Stanley and Sandra Rosenberg Endowed Chair in Urological Research at University of Texas Health and Mace Cancer Center, San Antonio. He's a CMC Ludhiana graduate. He pursued his urology residency from University of Nebraska and then pursued the prestigious SEO fellowship from Mayo Clinic. He's the program director of the SEO fellowship, and his recent paper was on the cover page of Journal of Urology on robotic IVC thrombectomy. He's an excellent person, a mentor, a proficient yoga trainer, and an advocate for the health burnout among physicians. Dr. Kaushik, over to you to talk about the perspectives of a program director. What do you see when they see an application process for a AUA or SEO fellowship? Dr. Kaushik.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone in India, and good morning to everyone in United States. Can you all see me okay, hear me okay?
Yes, sir, you're loud and clear to us.
Beautiful. I'm gonna share my screen here. Please let me know if you see my screen.
We can see your screen. Thank you, sir.
Okay, perfect. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed listening to everyone, and I'm glad to be part of this. Harshit, you had already mentioned letters of recommendation, personal statement. I want to go in more detail about those things. So my topic, Harshit wanted me to talk about what we are looking as program director in a candidate for urologic oncology fellowship. So I don't have any financial disclosure, no conflict of interest. Let's talk about letter of recommendations. So it should not be a generic letter. It should reflect the depth of understanding of that specific candidate by the faculty who's writing that letter. Should be powerful, should be catching. That's when I look at applicants, that's the number one thing I look is letter of recommendation, because that reflects your maximum time you have spent in either a urology residency or training or observership. So that person who's writing a letter should convey very genuine understanding of where you stand. What you recommend is, for example, I see a lot of this, that he or she is very hardworking. That's not good enough. What does the writer mean by hardworking? So when you're asking your mentors to write a letter, explain how that candidate is hardworking by giving realistic examples. Number two thing we look is research. It's not the quantity, it's the quality. I don't want to look at 20 papers, 30 papers. I want to look at whether you took the initiative to lead that project, first author, second author, whether you did any basic science research, translational research, which shows your interest. And even if you did not do basic science research, the clinical research you did, what kind of role did you play in writing that paper? So we're talking more granular details of what we should be doing as urology resident in promoting ourselves. So number one thing I would say is take leadership of that research project. Third thing we look for is evaluation by the home faculty. If you look at the SEO applicants application process, there are places where the home faculty, either chairperson or the program director at your home institution, is supposed to fill out an evaluation, which is supposed to be confidential. And if that evaluation that is scored out of 5, so 5 is the excellent, and 1 is poor evaluation. So we're looking at somewhere 4 or 5. This is very important. Interpersonal skills. What do I mean by that? When you are at a national meeting, try to engage with the program directors for conversation. When you email a program expressing your interest, make sure that email is professional. Check for grammar, errors, typos. Sometimes the email is the generic copy paste, and you can see it's it's sent out to all the programs. So make it very specific. Outline the reason that you want to be in a specific program. It's okay to write why you want to be in San Antonio or California. You know someone, you have worked with someone, your former resident trained there. So write some kind of reason explaining why you're interested in a specific program. Fill out the SEO application, which is a required document for us to review your application. Personal statement is a very important piece of document. Write a compelling story. And what I mean by that is synthesize whatever you have done so far, you know, medical school, how you got into medical school, how you got into residency, and how doing an SEO fellowship will help you. Help not only you, but how will it will help your community, your region, how you envision. So we want to hear about your vision. Check for typos, grammar. Be original, be you. Don't try to be someone else. We all have gone through a lot of struggle, a lot of training, a lot of school. Write your personal failure, your struggles. It's very important to be vulnerable. And what you have learned from your failure. How you see your failures. Because it's only our reaction to failures which makes us more successful. So it's very important to kind of deeply, you know, reflect on your failures and write that in personal statement. We look at other criteria, USMLE, explanation for gap in the training. If you had done residency, you know, a few years ago and you have been in private practice or somewhere else, please explain what did you do? Write about extracurricular activities. You know, you like to play an instrument, exercise, do something, travel. Write in that your personal statement. This is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me for any questions. Thank you, Harshit and the leadership for organizing this this webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kaushik. I think this is up to date, the most comprehensive summary for anyone to see for any application process for fellowship or even residency when you are applying in the United States. I think this will be a go-to-go session, you know, presentation from this webinar, because no one has ever talked us in so much detail when you frame letter of recommendations, the importance of personal statement and the importance of interpersonal skills. And Dr. Kaushik cannot stress more on that, but on a lighter note, I'll just share an incident with you that when I was reading a letter of recommendation, and you have to be very careful about typos and grammar. And one of the letter mentioned that this resident is in place of hardworking became hardly working resident. And so it just changed the essence for the letter of recommendation. So be always careful, vigilant about your grammar and typos whenever you are dealing them or when you're writing any statement or recommendation letters. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kaushik.
My pleasure. Thank you, Harshit.
Thank you. Now we have Dr. Sitaram Bhatt. He's an assistant professor of urology at Upstate University in New York. He did his urology residency from Stanley Medical College, Chennai, and then pursued the Endourology Society Fellowship at Advent Health Global Robotic Institute with Professor Vipul Patel in Florida. He's a well-known researcher, and I think he has guided a lot of us regarding the opportunities and fellowships available in the United States. Dr. Sitaram Bhatt, over to you.
Well, thank you, Harshit, for your kind introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Well, it's a big ask for me to present after the eminent speakers who spoke before me, especially Dr. Gagan Gautam and Dr. Kaushik. In fact, some of the insights which Dr. Gautam gave us is applicable even for new urologists like me who's just starting my career. I'm Sitaram Bhatt. I'm currently an assistant professor in urology at SUNY Upstate Medical University. Harshit asked me to present briefly on Endourology Society fellowship. Most of my presentation would be similar to what people touched upon because the process is similar. I'll just highlight a few things about Endourological Society fellowship and also give you basic principles, uh, which probably one should adhere to overcome any competitive exam. I'm sure a lot of you have given a lot of competitive exams and have come to this level. I mean, you're a resident in urology in India. You've gone through multiple levels of training and multiple levels of screening process to enter into a competitive program. So USMLE and the subsequent steps are not really tough. And it is possible. If I could do it, anyone can do it. Endourology Society is a non-for-profit organization that was founded in 1983. It's truly an international society. If you look at it, the fellowships are spread across the world. You have fellowships in India as well. And even the past flag bearers, like the presidents of Endourology Society, have come from across the globe. We had a past president from India as well. Endourology Society offers about 4 different kinds of fellowship. Two purely 2-year pure stone fellowship, 2-year of pure minimal invasive fellowship, 2-year of combined fellowship that includes both stones and minimal invasive surgery, and 1 year of clinical training. This slide shows various fellowship programs classified based on the region, based on the type, and based on the duration. If you look at it, though most of the fellowships are offered in North America, you do have fellowships across the globe, a few of them in Asia and a few of them in India as well. The Endourology Society not just offers fellowship programs, it also offers the following for its members. You have an endourology journal. You also have a good resource in the form of Journal of Video Urology, where you could access multiple videos from experts, and you can also put on your videos and submit your videos to this journal. There's a yearly World Congress of Endourology, which I think this year it's in San Diego. You get an opportunity to meet experts and present your presentation. They do conduct master classes, I think once a month on various specialty topics. And also you have access to sub-societies. You have a Society of Urological Robotic Surgeons, the Focal Therapy Society, and the Society of Engineering and Urology. It's very interesting if you look at the kind of work that these societies do. And I would strongly encourage you to look at their website and attend their meetings. As a resident, whether you're in training or you just finished your urology residency and you're pursuing your fellowship, I mean, you're looking for a fellowship in US, these are the questions that come in your mind. I mean, would I be able to do it? Where do I begin? Will the time be enough? And where should I start? To answer this, I can give you my personal perspective, but I would recommend you talking to multiple people, including Harshad, other fellows like Abhishek, and talk to them and see what did they follow to achieve their goals. Honestly, if I can do it, anyone can do it. When to begin is a question. Harshad, I said it must be as soon as you can. Well, I have a different take on it. There's no time limit. You can start when you're at 30, when you're at 40, when you're at 45. I've had people who've come in at 45 and done their fellowship here. Will time be enough? Again, it's kind of personal. It depends on what you're doing. If you're a resident, it's going to be tough. If you're working, it's going to be tough. Maybe an easier ask if you're in an academic program. Personally, I did all my steps during my residency, and I would take about 2 hours off every day when I'm not on call and do focused studying. And then I could get through the whole process within 6 months. It may look like it's an arduous journey for a fellow who's trying to, or for a resident who's trying to achieve this fellowship. There are a lot of twists and turns, a lot of steps to it. The key is to take it step by step. I think you have to break it into fragments, do one step at a time, focus on it, get through it, and go to the next step. The first step is USMLE. You have previous speakers who touched upon this. It's mandatory that you do step 1 and step 2. Step 3, some of the fellowship programs require it before you even apply, but some do not. You can apply with step 1 and step 2, and then you could do the step 3 before you actually start your fellowship. But they do require you to clear this fellowship step 3, both for your licensing aspect and also for your visa. When it comes to USMLE, a lot of questions come to me. How do I prepare? What are the right books should I use? How many hours do I put in? Is coaching required? What is the strategy? Honestly, there's no single strategy. Like I said before, talk to people, build your own personal strategy. And honestly, you guys have come across a lot of competitive exams. So this is a piece of cake, to be honest. Some of the key principles that I followed, which may be applicable to you, is make sure you have a schedule that's realistic. Considering your personal time, considering your current schedule, make a schedule for your exams. Revise your schedule regularly based on your actual progress. You should try and do uninterrupted time of study. You should be focused. There shouldn't be any interruption. So basically, when you're on call, there's no point studying. Also, an important thing is to plan your personal affairs. So at the time when you're coming closer to your test, you're not in a crisis. Make sure you take care of all your personal affairs ahead of time. And beware of some colleagues who will put you down. Avoid those people who are going to stress you out, and do not stress yourself for frustration. Again, another key thing is when you're preparing for USMLE, you cannot learn at all. So you have to maintain your sanity throughout the process. Focus on a few top-rated resources. I'll touch upon those in the next few slides. Do not read anything that's online. In the sense on vague websites online. A lot of these resources are online. But focus on some top-rated resources. And do allot adequate number of breaks in your schedule to avoid burnout. Maintain a healthy lifestyle. I think it's important that you eat well, you sleep well, you exercise well. These are some of the common resources that you can use to go through USMLE. UWorld is a good online question bank, and they do have mock tests. These mock tests, what they help you to do is they help you to assess how close are you to your actual goal. I mean, they're not similar to the actual exam, but if you do well in these tests, you're going to do well in the actual exam. First aid to USMLE, Kaplan is like an online coaching. Some people prefer it, some people do not use it. I did not use it. QSteps is again an online question bank. Once you clear your USMLE, the next step is to register yourself to AUA match. People have touched upon this again. Create a user ID. And then the application process is similar to what you do for an Indo-Urology society. You create an application with the society along with 3 letters of recommendation, your USMLE scores, your curriculum vitae, your personal statement. All these things are important as they form a part of your application. Right now, I think you can email all these applications to each program director. You don't really have to send in physical packet. Once you send in your application, the next step is you get invited to an interview. The interviews usually occur at the annual AUA Congress. So this year, you would have interviewed for fellowship coming up next year. The interview is usually conducted by the program director and the faculty, and it's mostly informal. It's mostly like an informal chat because they've already assessed you based on what you've submitted to them. Next is the step of preference list. So as a candidate, generally, I would like you to look into these factors when you prepare your preference list. And this is what generally candidates do too here in the US. So you basically look at how good the program is. Would you fit into the program? This is important. If you don't fit into the program, you shouldn't rank the program. Geographical location, I mean, it may not matter to us. I think you should go to any location in the US if the program is good. Speak to the other residents and fellows who are in the program. Get their insights and look at their quality and look at what they do generally. So it's much easier for you to work with them then. And then also take a look at your work-life balance. I think it's important to maintain, like I said, your sanity, your family. Most of you would be either having a partner or would have been married. Take their aspirations into consideration and see if they can get something. With regards to the program, Dr. Kaushik highlighted as to what he looks for. USMLE scores may be redundant, but publications, I can stress that that's the most important thing that you could currently do along with your preparation for USMLE. Your publications are the key. A few publications in a very good index journal where you've contributed enough is the key. And once you submit your preference list, the program submits their preference list, and the matching is done online by AUA. It's a computer software that does the match, and the final results will be emailed to you. This slide may be repetitive. This is again to tell you the timeline of things, and it's important that you plan ahead of time. Now, if you're looking for fellowships in 2024, it's important that you start planning this year and you start registering by December this year, and then you go through the whole process. Thank you. For any feedback and questions, please reach out to me on my email. And thank you, USI, for this opportunity. And I'm honored to present this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatt, for such a comprehensive presentation on preparation of USMLE and Urology Fellowship opportunities available. I think we all have learned from you over the time, talked to you a lot of times how to prepare and how to go about the licensing and stuff. So thank you so much for giving us your Sunday morning. And now I request Dr. Premal Patel. Dr. Patel is an assistant professor in University of Manitoba, Canada, and he did his urology residency from Canada and then pursued andrology fellowship from University of Miami. He would talk to us about the andrology fellowships available under a purview of AUA. However, due to some unforeseen reasons, he's not able to join us in today in person, but he has recorded us a session with his valuable guidance on andrology fellowships. So North Zone office, can we have his recording to be played on for the webinar?
Hello, my name is Premal Patel, assistant professor within the section of urology at the University of Manitoba in Canada. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak on andrology fellowships. What is an andrology fellowship and how to look for the andrology fellowship that best suits your needs. So just to discuss about the match process, when we think about the 2023 fellowship match, registration will begin in November of 2021. The rank list is due in 2022, and the results are released a year prior to starting the fellowship. Now, what is an andrology fellowship? Unlike other fellowships, such as oncology, there's quite a bit of heterogeneity when it comes to andrology. What is the component of male sexual dysfunction or Peyronie's disease or prosthetics? Is the infertility part of the fellowship? Is it a small component? Is it the main focus of the fellowship? What about BPH? Do you have options to learn minimally invasive therapy? So potentially enucleation as well. What about orcalgia? Is that part of the fellowship? Incontinence, such as male slings, artificial urinary sphincters. Is the fellowship 1 or 2 years? Vast majority of andrology fellowships are 1 year. There are a few 2-year fellowships which have more of a bigger research component to them, but they do exist. And again, what about the research opportunities? Is your fellowship director heavily involved in research? Do fellows get the opportunity to publish or attend conferences? Is there dedicated research time? And then finally, is it an accredited fellowship? Is it part of the Sexual Medicine Society or is it endorsed by the Society of Male Reproductive Urology? So all these things need to be taken into consideration when you're looking at fellowships. Of course, the ideal situation would be that you identify the fellowship that will prepare you for your future job. Unfortunately, the vast majority of us don't really know where we plan on working. We have an idea, but we may not know, our future job will be mostly sexual dysfunction or infertility or BPH. And at times, it can be quite challenging to know what specific areas you want to be trained in, or do you want to be trained in a vast or a few different areas to prepare you for a number of different employment opportunities. Now, a number of programs exist. Several in Canada exist, and a vast majority in the US. And this can be identified through the AUA, alternatively through the ASRM for those that are more infertility heavier, or the SMSNA, the endorsed programs. Now, the key to a lot of this is always trying to look early. And again, that can always be challenging because you may not really know what fellowship you want to do. But looking early really gives you an idea as to what the fellowship entails, how long is it, what it involves, and other aspects of it. So reach out to fellowships you're interested, ideally in your third year of residency.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Patel. I think Dr. Patel pointed a very important topic which you didn't touch, was the remuneration in fellowships. And often our young colleagues have the question like, how much will I get paid? How will I go with my family and salary structure? So briefly and broadly, I can tell you it's a decent salary structure. You can do your living during the fellowship, and it ranges around $60,000 to $80,000 per annum, depending on the city and the program you are in. Yeah. And now we have Dr. Girdhar Bora with us. He's an associate professor in Department of Urology in PGI Chandigarh and alumni of AIIMS Delhi. Dr. Bora is well-known young dynamic urologist in the young urology fraternity in India. And he's such a charming personality. He's a life of AUA among Indian colleagues this year in New Orleans. He has over 100 publications. And recently he was awarded the Indian American Urological Association Chakrabarti Fellowship. And so he would be giving us some insights about this fellowship and what are the eligibility and application process. Dr. Bora, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Harshit. Good morning to all of you, and good evening to our colleagues in India. And at the outset, I'd like to thank Dr. Kamal, Dr. Shivam, and Arjun Urological Society of India for this talk. And a lot of already been discussed and been told by the previous speakers about the licensing and fellowships in USA. Then I would say that this Chakrabarti Fellowship could be a bridge to get yourself exposed to American urological practice, because it's a fully sponsored trip and you can tend to visit AUA and as well as a visit to a center for 4 weeks where you can get exposed to a urological training program, and then you can take a decision whether you want to come to USA and do your fellowships, and also you either settle there and come back. So as I received this prestigious fellowship this year at New Orleans at the AUA 2022. And then after that, I went for 4 weeks observership at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. That's a high volume center for urology at Nashville, Tennessee. And if you see what the fellowship offers, as I said, this fellowship, if you want to get this fellowship, you need not to have a ECFMG certification, no other scores. You just have a good CV and a good personal statement. And what the fellowship offers, it's a fully sponsored trip. You tend to get a complimentary registration to AUA and accommodation at the AUA, and also accommodation for the 4 weeks in your host centers, your medical insurance, and as well as a $1,500 of stipend for your daily allowances. Now, basically this fellowship is sponsored by AUA, IUA, and Pulli Pradeep Reddy Memorial Fund at the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and usually given to 2 urologists in a year. And one of the urologists has to be a pediatric urologist or having a special interest in pediatric urology and observes for 4 weeks at Cincinnati Children's Hospitals. And another fellow, which I was this time, and can go to any of the host institutions where he chooses to visit. And what are the eligibility criteria for getting this fellowship? You should be a urologist and in India, and should be a member of Urological Society of India. He should be less than 42 years of age at the time of application. he should have a MD degree or a higher in his specialty. He should be having less than 10 years of practice after finishing his residency, and he should be able to get the visa and ready to be there for 4 weeks in USA. I think after post residency, it's a good fellowship to get yourself exposed for American urology practice. And the application process is simple. You have to go to the AUA portal and submit your CV and a personal statement and a letter of support from the department chair. And as was emphasized by the previous speakers, your CV is very important. You should have good number of publications as a first author or a corresponding author, and in a field where you want to perceive your fellowship. And another thing that Dr. Kaushik already emphasized, you should have a good personal statement about yourself. If you look into the application process, don't write generalized terms in personal note like it will be a great learning opportunity, or you want to learn from the experience of their consultants. There you need to expose to a newer research and technological advances. Don't cut paste from any of the personal notes. Write your own notes. Just give them what you do currently. If I am a robotic surgeon, so what I will write, what I have written in my personal note, that I have done so many surgeries and I am focused in robotic surgery, and I want to enhance my knowledge of robotic surgery. I want to learn intracorporeal divergence. I want to enhance my skills of nerve sparing prostatectomy. That's it. So you need not to write a broad thing. Don't cut paste. Write about your personal knowledge and what you want to learn from this personal note. You should be very specific in writing your personal note. That is the key for getting this fellowship. And also the letter of the support from your department chair, how good the letter of support is from the department chair. That's what already emphasized by Dr. Kaushik in his talk. And also your CV should support your personal note. You should, if I'm applying for a robotic surgery fellowship or in a program where the robotic surgery is done, your CV should be having publication in your robotic surgery, your awards in robotic surgery, and presentations in robotic surgery. And remove unrelated articles from your CV. You can do that. If you have gifted authorship or something like that, you can remove them. And it's very important, if you are a resident or in a training, you just must publish your Master of Surgery, MS thesis or a MCS thesis. And it's important to have good number of publications in a good journal with a good impact factor. That will definitely help you not even getting this fellowship in other boards, ECFM certified accredited fellowship, as already been emphasized by Harshit and other speakers previously. And now, what are the benefits of this fellowship? Because as a fellow, you tend to get a podium presentation. You tend to present your data at the forum at IAEA. And also you meet a lot of international scholars who have received these various American and other national exchange programs. And also you tend to meet the stalwarts in your field. Like in my field, in robotic surgery, I could meet a lot of stalwarts in robotic surgery and get their ideas, and you make connections and networking, as already emphasized by Harshit and other colleagues. And also you meet a lot of Indians who are working, doing good in USA. You meet over dinners, share their experiences and thoughts. And also I met Harshit in AU in New Orleans this time. We had a good time at New Orleans, and I do remember the meetings there. And then I moved from AU to Vanderbilt, and it's a high volume urology center. I made a lot of new friends, learned new tricks of the robotic surgery, nerve sparing prostatectomy, bladder neck preservations. And I could meet a lot of fellows there who are working in their program. And also I could meet the stalwarts of robotic surgery, Dr. Daniel Barkos, Roger Damakowski, and other colleagues. And we had a great time in Vanderbilt, and I could make a friends for lifetime in this fellowship. I can still in touch with a lot of friends, and we meet over Twitter about the new techniques and ideas. And also not only the career or other things, I could meet my friends in USA, in Huntsville. I traveled to Chicago, and I also could meet my MCH buddy, Dr. Subodh there. He was done MCH urology from AIMS, then he moved to his practice in Nepal. Then he decided to do USMLE. Then he wrote his steps. Then he did his robotic uro-oncology fellowship at Minnesota, and now he is a consultant at University of Minnesota. So that's what Dr. Sitaram said. There is no time when you can start. He was into his good urology practice, and then he moved to US, and now it's well settled there in US. So if you want to do it, you can do it. And thank you so much, Northern Urological Society of India, for this opportunity. And I would like to share that 2023 IU program, the Chakravarti Fellowship is open, application process is open, and the deadline is October 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bora, for sharing the insight on this very prestigious fellowship, especially for the Indian colleagues. I think a lot of us want to know about this, and you are the contemporary winner of this, awardee of this. I think no one else can explain this thing best. And thank you for remembering me from the AUA. And thank you so much. And now we have, I think we are moving to the last talk of this session. And I think this is a very special talk that I would like to welcome Dr. Abhishek Bhatt. He's an associate medical director at Jackson Health System. He did his in Miami. He did his urology residency from Christian Medical College Apollo Hospital, Chennai, and then pursued his uro-oncology fellowship from University of Miami under Professor Dipen Parekh. And I think he has been able to carve out his way in the United States, doing this fellowship, getting the licensing, going over the J1 waiver, and now he's a medical director in the health system in Miami. So I think he's one of those guys who knows the real crux and the ground realities on the visa licensing. And whenever we have any doubts, we just call him. And to further enumerate his achievements, it was his application profile, which was used by the state of Virginia, to do some reforms for the medical licensing for the international graduates. So I'm really honored to have him here today and to tell you the real ground realities on the visa licensing, board certification, and all that stuff. So thank you, Dr. Bhatt, for being here. And over to you, Dr. Bhatt.
Harshit, thank you so much for those words. Very humbling indeed. Good morning, everyone in US. A very good evening to everyone in India. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. Some wonderful talks before me. Hope we can keep up with them. My talk is going to be a little, actually quite different from the talks before. The thing is that all the previous talks were talking about how to get into fellowships, why do you need to get into fellowships, what do you do during a fellowship. My talk is what's going to happen after a fellowship. My talk is going to be on visas, licensing, post-fellowship considerations in the United States. I work in the Jackson Health System here in Miami, Florida. I'm one of the associate medical directors of urology and urologic oncology. The distance between India and the United States is not just 8,000 miles, 13,500 kilometers, or a 25 hours arduous journey. It's the cultural difference that you have to overcome. It's the, sometimes for some people, the language barriers that you have to overcome. But most importantly, it's the difference in the health systems that you need to kind of get used to as well. You've just heard Dr. Gagan's wonderful talk, Dr. Harshit as well, talking about the why of doing a fellowship. It's most important to know why you want to do a fellowship. But it's, it's important to also kind of understand what are the fellowships you're doing. And that's been beautifully laid out by the previous speakers. Dr. Kaushik actually went into great detail about what he looks for in an application. And let's say you landed yourself a plump little fellowship, or you're doing really well for yourself. You've done a SEO fellowship or one of these wonderful fellowships that Abhinav or Sitaram or the Premal have talked to you about. But the question is going to be, what's going to happen next, right? Are you just walking off a plank into a totally unknown territory? Is it going to be a calculated decision? And everything ultimately depends on what are the decisions that you have undertaken so far and what you're going to do in the next step. First of all, of course, it's decision time. Dr. Gagan pointed out, do you want to go back to India? Do you want to stay in here in the United States? Going back to India or staying here in the United States depends a lot on your personal factors. Families are important, obviously, the most important thing that you can honor. And let's say your family backs you and you decide to stay back in the United States. Then you have certain requirements that you need to do, you need to fulfill. And these are not taught to us during our residency, fellowship. You wouldn't have read about it in the USMLE preparation. Everything starts dawning in you when you slowly start coming to the completion of your fellowship. I'm going to go through these requirements one by one. I saw in the chat box there were lots of questions about whether you can do a residency in India and do a fellowship and settle down. All those questions. Let me try to at least get some clarity on that today. We as urologists love trifectas. We talk about trifecta and partial nephrectomy, prostatectomy. I coined a little trifecta of myself, and this is for the international medical graduates to work in the United States. This comprises of a job, a visa, an active, visa, working visa, and active, unrestricted medical license. And there's a very complex interplay, if you look at this slide, between these three things. If you want a job, you need a visa and you need a license in that particular state. If you want to have a license, you need a visa. At the same time, if you need a visa, you need a license. So it's a catch-22 situation, a chicken egg situation. And you throw in the variability of board eligibility and board certification, which is a little kind of a gray area for most of the trainees coming in. Then you've got to juggle between a lot of things. So let me start off with jobs in the US. Do we have jobs in the US? That's one of the first questions you need to talk about. And this is a paper in JAMA, Open Network, that came out very recently, and it looked at the projected US urology workforce per capita 2020 to 2060. And it looked at two working models. The stagnation model, let's say we continue to actually go ahead with the same numbers that we have, or a regressing model if we continue to regress the way we are in terms of urology workforce in the US per capita. And in both the models, it found that there's going to be an exaggerated shortage of urologists per person's age 65 years and older, which basically is our target to some extent. And based on this, we are never really going to recover from the urologists needed per capita, even up to 2050 to 2060, based on both the models. Now, we now know that the jobs are less, but do all these jobs come the way of every international medical graduate that comes here? Is there going to be an abundance of jobs that you can search for? And the answer is sadly no for many of the Indian urologists who come here. And I'll tell you exactly why that's the condition. It's not, you don't need 20 jobs or 30 jobs to be available to you. It's always good to choose from plenty, but at the end you need one or two jobs that you really want to settle down in. I discussed about how there was a complex interplay in between the jobs. Let's shift to the visas at this point of time. Let's talk about what are the visas that you talk on. And this is something I love telling, on the telephone calls that we do get from time to time, every weekend, some message saying, hey, what visa should I come on? And I always, this is something that I always put out there. I say, go back to when you actually came back to the United States. So the visa that you arrive with into United States, it is what decides the future course of events with respect to a job per se. You really have to honor certain visa requirements and conditions. So be careful with what visa you land on, and so that you honor those commitments before you actually move on to everything else. There are two commonly encountered visas, when physicians, urologists come to the United States. And the first one is, of course, the J1 visa. The second one is the H1B visa, which we are both familiar with to a certain extent. And the J1 visa is the workhorse, the visa that is given out much more than the H1B. In 95% of the circumstances, I would say a big academic program is going to rely on a J1 visa for the incoming urology candidate. Every visa needs somebody to pay for it. You cannot pay for the visa yourself. A lot of people tell me, well, can I pay for the visa myself and come in? No, you can't. It's the employer who has to sponsor your visa. So you need somebody to pay for your visa process. In case of the J1, it is the ECFMG that was touched upon earlier. You will be aware of it if you're not already when you do your USMLE steps. The Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates is going to sponsor that. You will be basically dealing with them. And in case of the H1B, it's basically a direct relation between you and your employer. So whosoever is employing you is going to give you that visa. Let's talk a little bit of detail on the H1B visa itself. It's a non-immigrant visa that allows the employment of highly educated foreign professionals to work in specialty occupations. A lot of, you may actually have people settled here, engineers, other specialty, they're all on the H1B visa, let me assure you that. It's a direct contract between employers and the physician, and there are no country or state related obligations per se. It's a relatively flexible option. I put it that way because the contract is between two people. It's between you and your employer, and you basically honor all the contractual agreements that you are talking about with your employer itself. There is a con to this H1B visa. Let's say you're going to come in on H1B visa and go back to India. You don't want to pay additional taxes. The United States recognizes this as a potential pathway to a green card process, a permanent residency, or an immigration potential. And the day you land here, you're going to be starting to pay taxes for Medicare, Social Security taxes. And that's a significant amount of money to pay additionally as a student, where every penny actually matters. I would like to emphasize again that this is an infrequent option for trainees, especially post-2016, when certain things happened in the administration. And the H-1B visas is restricted to select centers. Most of the places do give out J1, but there is no real center that cannot do an H-1B visa. I mean, it all depends upon the program, the agreement, and various factors that go in with it. The J1 visa, the go-to visa for most of the trainees who come in here is an exchange visitor visa. It's a non-immigrant visa intended for cultural exchange between two countries, in this case, United States and many other countries. There are, according to the USCIS, there are 14 categories of exchange visitor visas available. And one of the categories is physicians. This visa is ECFMG sponsored. So you need to be in touch with the ECFMG. Hey, where's my visa process going to? Is the visa getting to a stage where it's near completion or not? The ECFMG will be able to answer all those questions. The advantage, of course, is the taxes are much lesser in the J1 visa, at least for the first 2 years, unless you renew this. So the first 2 years, which usually most SUO fellowships, Endourology Society fellowships, they usually are for 2 years. And so you are paying lesser taxes. And there is a significant advantage to spouses. Many of us have physician spouses. Many of them have spouses who are in different spheres, who want to work, who want to study. And getting a dependent visa with an employment authorization is much, much easier in the J1 visa. So this is something which could be a good consideration if you're actually on a J1 visa, as opposed to the H1B visa. I wouldn't say this is a caveat, the next point, but yes, there is a contractual obligation to return to your home country, in this case, India, after completion of an educational program. Now, the validity of a J1 visa is 7 years. So potentially you could do multiple J1 visa, J1 on the same different J1 visas, you could do 7 years of education, but there's a contractual obligation to return to your home country. And this is called the home return rule. And this is for a minimum period of 2 years. So in case you do want to stay back in the United States, well, you will have to go back to India, stay there for 2 years and come back, unless you are identified by the United States, you're able to find a spot and you're able to land yourself a job in one of the underserved areas, which is basically the visa waiver program, the I-612 per se. Now, this program basically circumvents the 2-year home return rule. And unless this visa waiver has been fulfilled, the physician is ineligible to apply for a permanent residence or go on to an H-1B visa itself. Now, a physician has only 30 days to finish his training period and leave the United States. So if you are not back in the you're not back on a flight going back to India within 30 days, you're essentially accruing illegal status within the United States. You're out of status. You're not illegal or anything like that, but you're just out of status. And that could potentially make things a little complicated for you if you do decide to stay on. There are multiple options of obtaining a J1 visa waiver. Questions come up, are these jobs that difficult to get? I mean, these are very specialized jobs. Yeah, they're tough to get, but there are options to go about each one of these jobs. There are 5 avenues that are available: the Conrad 30, the Appalachian Regional Commission, Delta Regional Authority, the DHHS, and of course, the Veteran Affairs, the VA health system that gives out these programs. I'm not going to discuss about each and every one of them because it's out of purview for many of us, but I'm going to discuss a little bit on the Conrad 30 program itself. 30 physicians are chosen from every state, irrespective of the size, the population, through a lottery system. It's as simple as that. You put in your application every year for a J1 visa waiver program. You should have a job first. Your job will apply this for you. These are designated medically underserved areas, health professional shortage areas. And you're basically looking at the period of usually July to December, where different states come out with these dates. And it's a first come, first serve kind of first come, first serve kind of they choose it on the basis of that. Most states prefer primary care physicians. They really don't see the benefit of having a robotically trained uro-oncologist in a slightly underserved area. They don't see the role of a microandrologist doing complex vasovasostomies, vasoepididymostomies in an underserved area. They do prefer primary care physicians, but there are specialty positions available as well. There are traditionally some states which are tougher to crack: Florida, Texas, California. They're very tough to track because there are multiple applications. For 30 spots, you may have multiple applications, and therefore they are not the easiest to get through. The third prong of this entire thing after jobs and visas is licensing. Every state has its own medical license, just like India. It's not very different. An individual will require an active, unrestricted license to practice medicine on his own. That includes urology. The rules and regulations for every state will vary. There is nothing which is, in black and white for international medical graduates. Sometimes you really have to call them up and find out what's the rules and regulations for your state. And it tends to be much stricter for many of the foreign trained graduates. So state licensing becomes especially very tough. Harshit pointed out the case of West Virginia. It was a very unique case that it was giving us international medical graduates problems. The rules were a little archaic. 1931 was the last time that they had actually updated the rules, and we were able to move the Senate and get some rules changed. And that's actually reflected in the fact that 2 of my junior colleagues have actually gotten jobs this year in the state of West Virginia. And it's quite rewarding to see people settling down wherever they want to based on these kind of things. Any one state license is enough to practice in the VA health system. This is important. You may not get the state license where you are, but if you have any one state license, you can practice in any of the VA in the 50 states. And the VA health system basically caters to the Army personnel, and it's a very big group of hospitals that is required for the care of the Army personnel itself. Now, the couple of things: licensing for physicians who have not completed an ACGME accredited residency. It was touched upon earlier. The American Council for Graduate Medical Education is what counts more than the society fellowships. That is considered to be an accredited program. It is subject to the discretion of the state medical councils. For example, in the state of Florida, I had actually, all of us we have to represent ourselves in front of a courtroom, literally, with multiple people looking at your CV, the kind of research you've done during a residency, and then they eventually establish a license of equivalence for you, which basically is an unrestricted license based on your caliber itself. So it is a case-by-case kind of a scenario that you have to go through if you have not done your residency in the United States. This is a lesser kind of entity known to India. At least I did not know the depths of the boards when I was back in India. The American Board of Urology. Now, let me put it this way. After an MCH or a DNP exam in India, there is an exit exam. And at the end of the exit exam, if you pass that exam, then you are a urologist. Well, in the United States, it's a little different. It's a 5-year residency program. You do the 5 years and you're allowed to essentially practice urology anywhere because you're considered to be board eligible. Now, to become board certified, then you again have to go through this American Board of Urology exam, which is in 2 stages, and then you become board certified. So essentially all US and Canada ACGME residency program trained urologists are board eligible when they finish residency. So are we board eligible when we come to India, from India here? We are not. Are we board, would we be board eligible? I'll talk about that in a little while. There are 2 exams, written and oral, to be cleared to become board certified. The oral boards take a little longer. It's the boards are essentially meant to establish and maintain baseline standards for the benefit of the public. Now, there is an alternate pathway for foreign fellowship trained graduates only in the United States. It is a case-by-case basis. It is viewed as an extraordinary circumstance. It does need a current academic employment in an academic center where there is core teaching residency program approved by ACGME. You need to hold the rank of a full professor. So you're essentially looking at least 7 to 10 years before you actually fit into the board eligibility criteria. And you need to be at least 7 years working in that particular fellowship, in that full-time position as an academic urologist. So only if you can fulfill these 3 do you actually go on to become board eligible, after which you take up your boards. It is an uphill task. I mean, there is no doubting it. It's a long task to become board certified, board eligible. It depends on multiple factors. And I think it is something that is going to come if you are really, really persistent with it and you pay a lot of attention and time to what you're doing with your career in the meantime. There are benefits of being board eligible and board certified. Let's not take that away at all. I mean, there are requirements for most academic positions with board eligibility and board certified. There are better prospects in private practice with regards to insurance and billing acceptance. You know, a comment was probably raised earlier, whether there's private jobs yes, you can absolutely work without a board eligibility or board certification in private practice. It just depends upon your practice, whether they're able to sustain you with the slightly limited insurance and billing acceptances that some practices have. The advantage, of course, is there's more freedom to switch between jobs. There's no doubt in that. You know, you move around much easier as without with a board certification than without. And most importantly, I feel is when patients do look you up, sometimes they do actually see whether you're board certified or eligible, because it's a basic minimum criteria that the American Board of Urology sets out to say. Now, the question is totally different, however. Is it mandatory to work in the United States? Well, I would say it's not mandatory, but it's preferable. Most academic programs do require it. Private sector jobs do prefer board certification, but it is not mandatory if your program director or your hospital, based on your expertise or your physical, you know, kind of how you're required, is they're able to sustain it. So that's most important when it comes to whether it is sustainable in the United States. You know, I would just like to conclude by saying decisions post-fellowship to stay back in the US have logistic as well as legal challenges. These are not challenges which you face. Can you do a IVC thrombus? Can you do a really tough post RPLND, you know, post chemotherapy RPLND? These have nothing to do with that. These are logistic, these are legal. There is the trifecta of finding the right job, getting the visa requirements, and the state license in where you're going to practice within a very stipulated time. You have 2 years, right? You're doing a fellowship in 2 years, and then you're trying to get all these things done in the meantime is pretty daunting. Make up your mind early. You know, it could be in India, it could be early during your fellowship. Make up your mind whether you want to stay here, whether you want to go back. It's pretty important for your further decision making. Talk to your program director, mentor, senior colleagues. They've been there, they've done that. They can help you. They can actually guide you regarding where to apply, how to go about it. And get all the legal help and advice you need. America is the land of lawyers to a great extent, unfortunately, and we will hit areas where we don't know what it is. So while you're in the US, do take legal help and advice. The dream is free. The hustle is sold separately. There is no real escaping the hustle. It is not a bed of roses, as very rightly said earlier, but it is definitely something which you can aim for. This is the Jackson Health System, the flagship hospital, Jackson Memorial Hospital, of which I'm part of, the largest county hospital in the United States. Feel free to look me up if you're in the United States. Happy to answer any queries. You can find me there. Again, North Zone and Dr. Kamal, Dr. Shivam, and especially Harshit, thanks for getting together a team and making this a possibility to a lot of people who have these questions unanswered. And, we're all there to actually support your journey as you come here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatt. That was a fantastic talk, I think. I think a quick message for all of you. Like, I call him the lawyer of the physician's world for immigrants. He knows so much. So whenever you get a fellowship, just call him, get in touch with him, and he'll give you real good guidance on the ground realities of the visa and stuff. And he really point out that trifecta. That's really fantastic. These are the troubles you face when you come in. So thank you, Dr. Bhatt, for being a part of this webinar and enlightening us on such a rarely talked topic. Like, I think it's never been discussed in any forum in India, that what happens really when you come in after fellowship. What is this visa? What is this certifications? What is this licensing? So thank you so much again. And now I think we have reached to the conclusion of this webinar. I think we saw some quick questions on the chats, and I've tried to answer them mostly. Most of the things, like, you can give your steps in any moment. Yes, you can stay after your fellowship in the United States. Dr. Bhatt has pointed out, you have to get a license, visa, and board certification, of course, needs a academic job, full professor. So that's a different journey altogether. And I think I talked about the pay, which you get routinely, like around $60,000 to $80,000. So that's a thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this. And over to you, Dr. Singh, for the concluding remarks.
Thank you, everybody. Before I sign off, I would like anybody in the forum who wants to make a comment, please, can go ahead and make it. Okay, since we are already overshooting the time which we had allotted, on behalf of the President North Zone, Professor Shivam Priyadarshi, and the North Zone Council, I would like to thank all the faculty members for their extensive and a very, very, very informative talk. If I have to give 5 stars, there are 5 stars, so this was 5 plus 5.5 stars. I will give more than that even. It was almost all points which everybody will have in their mind while they want to migrate to US for a fellowship or want to take up this opportunity has been answered. To everybody who's still in the forum, I will be putting up this recording for everyone so that they can listen it again and again. From the core of my heart, I would like to thank Dr. Harshit Garg for taking so much pain to make this webinar a success. The other faculty members like Dr. Abhinav Sidhana, Professor Dr. Abhishek Bhatt, Professor Dharam Kaushik, Premal Patel, Dr. Gagan Gautam, our dynamic Dr. Bora, and Dr. Sitaram Bhatt. Thank you all, and God bless you all. Thank you, and we would like to be in touch with you all. And I will request all the young faculty, young urologists who want to take up this, want to explore the opportunities in the United States, please note down the emails of all the faculty members. In case you need their number, emails, you can directly message me also. I will share all the emails with you. Thank you, everybody. And with permission of everybody, I would like to close the session.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kamal. Such a wonderful webinar, and thank you, Harshit. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.